Welcome to the UNBC Forestry Club Podcast. This podcast is recorded at the Seaford radio station on campus from the traditional unceded territory of Clayton Tenay. You're probably listening from other places in BC or Canada or maybe around the world. We encourage you to recognize the traditional territory you get to learn, play, and live on. All right, welcome back, smart people. So today we have a really special episode prepared for you because this legendary sheep shepherd that uses sheep in silviculture practices in BC, and his name is, if you work in the industry, you've probably heard of his name before. He is the legendary Dennis Loxton. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're so happy today to have the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you. This is wonderful, and I'm really excited about it, and hopefully people like what I've got to say. So I'll just start off with, I've been a silvicultural contractor in BC for 50 years, and now I'm retired. I'm going home to Australia, and but before I leave, I want to share with Canadians something that I feel like hasn't been shown to them clearly, and that is how good sheep are at reducing competing vegetation on plantations that are failing because too much competing vegetation.
Right.
So as weird as it sounds, it was really difficult to get started in the first place because first of all, the big fear was, well, of course sheep are going to eat the trees and bears are going to eat the sheep, and your wolves and coyotes and everything are going to eat the sheep. It's clearly not going to work. And however, because of my...
Move the microphone a little closer, please. You can just move it a little downwards. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yeah, so... my history, my trade is I'm a wool classer. That means I grade sheep's wool in outback shearing sheds. So we would go, like, this is in the real shearing industry of Australia. You're in a team that goes in and shears, goes to some guy's ranch and shears 30,000 sheep, and then we drive 200 clicks through the bush to another big sheep station, shear there, 27,000 sheep, whatever. But these were the numbers that I was exposed to, and I was in that. The course was actually 4 years. I failed 1 year, and so I was in it 5 years. But also, before they even let me get in the course, well, I went to this... I had a childhood girlfriend whose father was a wool classer, and his life looked really exciting to me, heading off into outback shearing sheds all the time and coming back and he'd have 20 really hardcore mates with him. They're all sheep shearers, and the whole thing looked like a great adventure to me. And so anyway, I approached the school when I was 17, and they said, "Oh, we only want farmers' sons." And I said, "Yeah, well, I'm a farmer's son." And they said, "Oh, have you got sheep? Your dad got sheep?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "How many sheep you got?" And I said, "Well, we've got 30 right now." And he says, 30,000? I said, "No, 30 sheep." And he just burst out laughing. He said, No, we want real sheep farmers in this industry. You guys are orange farmers and you're playing around with a few lambs. Well, yeah, it's true. And so I said, "Well, how do I get into the course?" And he said, "I'll go and work on a prestigious merino stud farm, for example. Do that for 6 months. We'll let you in the course." So I went and worked on a stud farm dealing with shorthorn cattle and merino sheep of the best quality.
So when was this again?
This is in South Australia. And
when?
Oh, ever guess, way back. I was 17, so that'd be 1967 or something.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so anyway, so I started working in these. First, you go to 3 months in Adelaide and learn about, well, wool, and then you go and you do, under the supervision of a wool class, to go and work in these school delegated sheep shearing sheds. And so I did that all over Australia. And I really enjoyed it. It was a really good, exciting lifestyle and big bucks, and I felt like I had a good future. But Australia has some just terrible droughts. Now, it might not rain for 4 years or something, and there's dead sheep everywhere, and it's just a bloody horror show. Farmers praying for rain, the bankers leaning on them, saying, we'll get a wool crop off of these before they die. Some of those drought areas are so large that bankers won't let them take their sheep to somewhere else that's outside of the drought area, because it costs more to get them there than they're worth when they get there. So basically they just hope it rains, and it gets pretty ugly. Like I've seen a lot of dead sheep, and yet anyway, next thing, here I am tree planting in Canada. And they were just starting to give out contracts in 1974, and so some Australian mates of mine, we got one, just 4 guys, helicopter job, take us out bush, drop us off, start planting trees, and it was pretty brutal. For example, day 1, we're off tree planting, and a mother black bear and 2 cubs came and just trashed camp and ate all the food that wasn't in cans. Yeah. So meanwhile, there's no radio, there's no getting out of there. It was a helicopter job. And so, right there you learn like, whoa, and we did have a rifle, but we didn't want to shoot the bear. What are you going to do with her? And then you got to shoot the cubs, and we're running out of food. Are you going to eat the cubs? What are you going to do? Yeah. Anyway, we got through it all, and...
So where was the food coming from? What do you eat?
Oh, we still had canned food, and we were on really strict rations after that.
Okay.
It was 6 weeks before the helicopter came back to get us. And,
okay.
But anyway, it worked. We got all the trees planted, the bed. We'd light big campfires every night and that. And so anyway, we got through it all. Come back out of that, we'd made the big bucks, and we were just 24 years old, and what made perfect sense was take a trip to Mexico and party, right? So we did that.
Perfect.
And and the client contacted us and said, we really love what you did. We got another contract. Would you come back in the fall, do it again? The fall contract was in the Nass River, an island in the Nass River, and so we'd go down the Nass River, plant this island, go back to logging camp. And after that, I could see the client was saying, hey, there's going to be more tree planting contracts, and you guys, if you're interested, just should stick around. And anyway, me 2 mates went back to Australia. They weren't interested, and 2 of us stayed. And after a while, I had 200 really good tree planters, and he had 120 or something. Anyway, it worked. Somehow we were able to attract the most amazing tree planters, and the whole industry was just starting then. And so what we did, we just looked for university jocks that wanted to work in the bush, and put them through some pretty tough interviews, but we wound up with just 200 every year for many years of most amazing tree planters, and the whole thing worked. Clients were good to us, and it worked, right? Well,
right.
There was one wasn't too good, but anyway.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah. But anyway, meanwhile, as a guy who just came from drought Australia where grass is gold, you start planting trees on, say, the 1st of May. Well, after about 10 days, all the stuff starts growing up, and you just can't believe that this is so lush and so abundant, and like miles of it, right? And we'd say to the forester, hey, look at all this vegetation, like you could run a lot of sheep here.
Right.
And they would just laugh right in your face and tell you you're an idiot, and that's as far as it went, right? But anyway, I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Sorry to interrupt you. So is Australian forestry is the same? Do they have this free growing policy? You have to have trees hit a certain age, certain density, certain stocking standard?
No, I wasn't involved in forestry in Australia.
Okay.
Although I got to tell you, on that topic, I was trying to convince Canadians to let me run sheep on plantations. And meanwhile, here I am with 200 amazing tree planters, and I took a trip to Australia, and I couldn't help myself. I mean, I was a workaholic. And I'd go and bug the Ministry of Forests and look how they were planting trees. And it was like the Dark Ages. They didn't have a clue. And I took a couple of Australian tree planters with me from here. And and I was saying, like, we're standing there looking at this effort going on by Australians, and their production was 400 a day, whereas I'd say to my guys, how many could you get here? And I'd say, if I couldn't plant 2,000 a day, I'd give the game away, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, when the guy's explaining the production of 400 a day, he says, oh, by the way, that doesn't count for rainy day time. Oh, rainy day time? Like BC, you get rained on all the time, tree planters. Anyway, in Australia, if it started raining, if they'd run and sit in the pickup truck. If it lasted more than 20 minutes, they'd all go home. So this is government workers. Their production was terrible.
Why do they go home? They just don't want to get rained on?
They don't work in the rain.
They just don't
in Australia.
Interesting, hey?
That is very interesting.
So anyway, I said to this guy, look, I can show you how to, let me bring in 30 guys and we'll plant 1 million trees in each state and show you guys how to really plant trees. And they had a meeting about it, and they come out and they said, we're never going to give you a tree planting contract. You're going to disrupt everything. The Canadians are just too far ahead of us. We can't make that change. Please don't phone us anymore.
Wow.
Right.
Okay, meanwhile, I'm trying to say to Canadians, look, we'll get all these sheep, we'll go and eat up all the grass and save your plantations. And anyway, meanwhile, they're both telling me, Australia and Canada, telling me I'm an idiot, don't bother us anymore. Anyway, eventually, they gave me the 3 contracts. I was running around saying, look, I'll get the sheep and the shepherds and the guard dogs and all of that. And they're going, yeah, very interesting, but stupid, right? Anyway, eventually they gave me 3 contracts, each one for 1,200 sheep. And here I've been running around making all this noise, and I didn't even have 1 sheep, right?
Yeah.
Were those contracts, were those government contracts or?
Ministry of Forest, but also licensees.
Oh, okay, nice.
And,
by the way, just let me introduce Adam. I didn't get a chance to. Adam is with us today. He's a member of the UNBC Forestry Club, and then he's the event coordinator for the club as well. Mm-hmm. Thank you for joining us.
No worries.
Sorry, keep going, Dennis.
Yeah, so eventually here I am with 12, tree planting prices were going down through just craziness, low bid nonsense, right? Mm-hmm. And what I was hoping is I would get contracts to plant the trees, graze them off with sheep until they're free to grow, and then farm the sheep, and all on a big scale, right? And anyway, that was not allowed to happen. It was just too much. However, tree planting price is going down. I thought, okay, I've had enough of tree planting. I'll just be a sheep contract now. And so the first year we had 3 flocks of 1,200, and it went well. Foresters were impressed, and the farmers were impressed. Oh, I rented sheep from Alberta. I got a list of there's an outfit that sells that handles all the wool and everything related to sheep in Alberta. So I phoned up them and I said, can you give us a list of the farmers who have
free sheep,
the most sheep, right?
Yeah.
So then I called a meeting of all these guys, and actually the list had would say this Hutterite colony, and in Australia we don't have Hutterites. And I called them back, and what's a Hutterite? And they went, they're religious-based communes that have huge, beautiful farms and excellent livestock. I went, okay. And then he says, when you deal with them, be careful. They haggle like crazy all the time, but when they make a deal, they stick to it. Oh, okay, I can live with that, right? Mm-hmm. So I called this meeting of all these farmers. I rented the hall in Alberta, and it was a bunch of chairs all around the outside of this hall. And all the Hutterites, or all the main sheep farming Hutterites, had sent the colony boss, the colony minister, and then the sheep man. And then beside them would be another boss, another minister, another sheep man. And these guys were all wearing black suits. They all got black beards, and none of them were smiling. And anyway, I'd written up contracts that I was saying, this is the contracts I'd enter into with a farmer. Anyway, nobody's smiling, I'm explaining it all. Like, I've got all this grass in Prince George or in BC, and I want to rent your sheep, truck them over here, get them to eat up all the grass all summer, and then truck them back, and then I'll pay you sheep rent for that summer, and then okay. Someone said, what if one dies? Well, then I'll compensate you full market price, no questions, right?
You pay him.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
If what if a bear comes and kills one of his sheep, right? Don't worry, we pay in full market price. Okay. Anyway, this went on for a while, but nobody's really smiling. And then finally, this guy who I just assumed was the boss Hutterite of all of them, he says, excuse me, Dennis, I've got a question, but please don't take offense. And, yeah, okay, go for it. And he says, now, you're saying you're going to rent our sheep and load them on your trucks and truck them all over to BC and get them to eat the BC grass, and then you're going to truck them all back, right? And you're going to pay all the trucking and compensate us for any dead ones. That's correct. He says, now, we've heard a rumor, and don't take offense, but we've got to ask. And I went, yeah, go for it. I'm ready. Ask me anything. He says, well, you're Australian, right? And as you know, Australia was a convict colony. It was a penal settlement, right? And I said, that's correct. He says, is it true, don't take offense, but is it true that your forefathers were sent to Australia for sheep stealing? And I just burst out laughing. I wasn't expecting it. Well, and everyone's glum, right? And I said, look, I don't know or care why the first Loxton got sent to Australia. They sent, 150,000 convicts there, right? Maybe they were sent there for sheep stealing. All I know is I'm a businessman, I've got an idea, and I believe that we can all make a lot of money if we look after each other. And they all went, everyone suddenly started grinning and going, yeah, this is all good. Anyway, that was the first year, and we signed up 3,600 really good sheep. And then,
from Alberta?
From Alberta.
Okay.
Trucked them over. We had one contact from Revelstoke, one in Wells, one up in, I don't know, Smithers or somewhere. Anyway, it went well, and the sheep, they all got fat. The farmers were really happy, and after their first lambing, they were saying, we got more lambs by sending our sheep to you than we did if we kept them home. And they did comparison studies and all that, right? Anyway, so the next year I bumped it up to 6,000 sheep. So we increased the flocks from 1,200 to 15, and then we had 4 flocks of 1,500 sheep. So so then there would be 4 camps, travel trailers, mobile sheep corrals, guard dogs, shepherds, all of that. So each flock would be 1,500 sheep, 3 shepherds, 8 guardian dogs, and 4 herding dogs. So there's a dozen dogs per flock, and 4 of these. So what we'd do, we'd set up a mobile corral system on landings, and then stay on that landing for about a week, and then move them to a different landing, because once sheep don't like mud, and once the landing gets shitty and muddy, they don't lay down and sleep well, and so then they waste time sleeping a day. So you're better off moving camp every week, right?
Right.
And what it does is it rehabs the landings. Like, landings are an embarrassment to the forest industry because they're basically dead with compaction and. Anyway,
just to give the audience a context, landing is just a big open area for them to deck the wood. That's where the processed wood, that's where they load all the wood.
That's right.
It's just a lot of compaction because you have lots of trees piled up right
and
there.
big loaders and
and machinery all parked
yeah,
there.
big trucks and the whole thing. Yeah. Anyway, that landing, they take all the topsoil off at first, and anyway, that landing is compacted and it's bloody dead. If you run sheep on it for 1 week, 1,500 of them, sheep manure gets ploughed into the surface soil by the hoof action. Seed blows in or gets in there, and next thing, a year later, that dead landing is like just a lush patch of clover.
Yeah.
And so there are bonuses like that we didn't even know would happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this went on for a while, and I'm looking at these farmers, and I can see there's serious money in lamb production. And at the time, wool prices were high, and I could see and I'm spending all this money on trucking. Why don't I buy a farm here, and 1,000 sheep and set it up here, and then get another one and expand as I can. Anyway, so there was a beautiful farm available out in Wright Creek Road, just north of Prince George, and Salmon Valley. Anyway, so we bought that, and I got the Hutterites to design the ultimate sheep barn, and all my main Hutterite friends, they'd all add different things to the plan. And anyway, so we got a contractor in, built a beautiful big barn, 60 feet wide, 300 feet long, and that is what you need to winter 1,000 ewes, right?
Okay.
So I bought 1,000 really high quality ewes, once again from the Hutterites. Like, I knew who had all the best sheep. And
Yeah.
Are you telling me after one season you make that much money, you could purchase all of these stuff?
Oh, no, like I was a tree planting contractor.
Oh,
so
okay.
we made money with 200 tree planters.
Got it.
So this is every penny I can get hold of, putting into this farm and buying sheep and guard dogs and all of that. Right?
And just help me to construct the timeline of this. So when we first moved to Canada again?
70. My first tree plant contract, 1974.
74.
Yeah, both spring and fall. And then
The first herd of sheep there, so that was 1974 as well, or 1970.
the first one?
That when you first get those thousands of sheep from Alberta.
No, we they wouldn't let me do any sheep veg management until 1991.
Oh, so the way back.
Yeah,
far,
yeah. In fact, I got sick of trying to sell this to them. Now, okay, one day a forester came to me and he said, "Do you know there's a tough old bushwhacker down in 100 Mile House, and he's just got permission to graze off a plantation just next to his farm." And I was, okay, what's his name and address? I went straight down to see this guy. And really, really kind, nice country people, right? And he said, "Yeah, come and have a look at." I'm saying, "Are you sure that sheep won't eat spruce trees?" He says, "Come and have a look at my field." All over his field, there are little spruce trees. He was short of grazing, so the whole place was grazed down to dirt, and they hadn't touched one of these spruce trees. And he's saying, "I have to come along and cut them all down all the time. Too many spruce trees in my paddock," right? So anyway, I took all the tree planting contracts in that area so I could go and have a beer with the shepherds around the campfire and, did any sheep eat any trees today? Did any bears come and eat
sheep?
No, Anyway, did any sheep eat any trees? Did any bears eat any sheep? And they'd say, no, sheep don't eat trees. And what about bears? No, the dogs chase them away. And, well, okay. Anyway, I decided I would watch this for 1 week, and then I'd go in and sell it to the Ministry of Forest, right? So after 1 week, I was so excited. I went in there, and I got dressed up, and I went in there, and I caught all the management in the coffee room. And get this guy a coffee. Yeah, come here and have a coffee. And okay. So what are you doing here? And I said, look, you know that experiment down in 100 Mile House? And they said, oh yeah, that old sheep guy. Yeah. I said, it works. Sheep don't eat spruce trees, and I'm here to say I want to take veg management contracts. I'm interested in all the environmentally sensitive veg management contracts in the province. And they all just burst out laughing and, you got to bring your gumboots and all this nonsense. And I'm going like, I hadn't heard a gumboot joke before. We don't have that in Australia, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm going like, what's the matter with these people? And they're all laughing, and off they go back to their offices. And I'm sitting there. There's only one girl sat with me, and I'm like shocked. And I said, she said, by the way, your idea is a really good idea. I said, well, what happened to those guys? And she said, oh, they're just idiots. Just ignore them. Oh, okay. Anyway, it turned out that it made sense to her because she was a hobby wool spinner.
Oh,
And
okay.
I said, well, I'm a wool classer. I can help you get the best wool in the world. And, okay. So we had a good chat about it. I had to, I went back out to tree planting camp. I had to break this bad news to my wife. And she said, yeah, okay, well, let's just keep planting trees. We'll ignore these guys. We'll go home to Australia and buy a nice sheep farm there, and let's just keep planting trees. It's going well, and okay. Anyway, so that went on until till '91 when they gave me 3 contracts. Anyway, we did it for basically 20 years, and but for 16 of those years we had 6,000 sheep.
That's
And
crazy.
Wow.
So I was, now given that the biggest sheep farmer in BC has 1,000, really nice people. They're down in Wavenby, the Molliet family. But the interesting thing about them is they're 4th generation sheep farmers. With this is Granddad's flock. And anyway, I went down to see them. They had alpine grazing where nobody else had alpine grazing for sheep. And then I'm trying to go, well, why aren't there sheep everywhere in Canada? They got a vegetation problem. There's top dollar in market lamb. Why aren't there millions of sheep here, right? Anyway, the answer always came back. There's the short of predator or cheap, predator-free summer grazing. So the Molliets, they had the alpine, but nobody else had that kind of grazing. And but plantation grazing could change all that and open it up to, well, who cares how big? I mean, I can't help it. I think like all of my training was like 50,000 sheep. Our neighbor had 50,000 sheep, right? So most of the
15,000?
50. No, my neighbor had 30,000.
Okay.
And these guys only had 7 to 10 inches of rainfall. So imagine how big his ranch has got to be in 10 inches of rainfall to have 30,000 sheep. Yeah. Anyway, really nice people, really good sheep. I used to work in their shearing shed every year. But just the fact that there was infinite vegetation here, that not only could you get the sheep to eat it, but you could charge for that vegetation reduction, right? Yeah. And then when you start looking at how much money there was in fat lamb production, you go, well, okay, let's max this out. Okay, so then everything was going good. I was running around visiting anybody who knew something about sheep. And it's really interesting. There aren't a lot of large sheep farmers in BC. However, there are all over BC, there are these little farmers with 30 sheep, right? Not 30,000, just 30. Now, at first it seemed, hang on, why would you mess around with 30,000 sheep, with 30 sheep?
Yeah.
Having 30 sheep, it's like having one dairy cow. You still have to get up and milk it Sunday morning kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And there's no real money in 30 sheep. So I started visiting these guys, and they were all fanatics, and they were really knowledgeable about sheep. And they all had their different breeds that they were, so proud of. Anyway, so I bought 1,000 really good Hutterite sheep, and the whole thing was going well. And anyway, then I heard about a guy in Victoria, a government guy, who they said, oh, he knows a lot about sheep. Okay. So I went down to Victoria, went and had a meeting with this guy, and he seemed like a really nice guy. And then he says, so what breeds are you going to use? And I said, well, I really like Rambouillet and Suffolk as leaders. So say we'll have 90% of the flock will be Rambouillet, and 10% of the flock will be Suffolk leaders because they're smarter and they lead the flock, right? And he's going, yeah, good idea. And And then he started talking about a breed that his father used to breed that have like 5 lambs at once, but they're only tiny little guys, but if you cross them with other sheep, they trigger that multiple lambing, right?
Well, how much is normal range? Like how many lambs?
Oh, usually they only have 1 or 2. You try.
Okay.
The average seems to be about 150% lamb crop for most Canadian farmers.
Got it.
Some get more. Ideally, you get twins all the time, but it never really happens, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, so this guy is saying, yeah, all good, and then he says, you want to know where the real big money is going to be? And I went, yeah, pray tell, right? And he says, milk 'em. And I must have rolled my eyes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And he says, wait. You don't have to do anything about it right now. All you have to do is get it up and happening now. But think about this. Just keep it in mind. The most expensive dairy product in the world is sheep cheese. Oh. And then he says, but the real beauty is you don't need a permit to market the meat. Now, I mean, to
milk.
Market the
milk.
The milk product.
Yeah.
Okay, so hang on, and he's making a big deal about this, and I'd recently met a guy who had just spent $2 million, this is way back, on a dairy quota to sell the milk for his 100 cows. Cost him $2 million for the quota, just for the piece of paper that says that you can sell your milk. And I said, hang on, are you telling me that I can produce as much dollar value as he can in dairy products, and I don't have to pay the $2 million? He said, no, there's no such thing as a dairy quota for sheep. And he says, of course, they're going to make you get one later, but they'll just grandfather you in. But I said, so tell me about the sheep cheese thing. And I'm starting to get more serious about it. And anyway, so I heard about a sheep dairy down in Kangaroo Island off of South Australia. So I flew down there and went and had a look at that. And there it was. I'm making sheep cheese, sheep yogurt and all that. There's a big glass front on the whole dairy, and on this side of the glass is a bloody restaurant, and there's tour buses pulling in there, and everyone's having a cup of tea or a coffee, some sheep yogurt on apple pie or something, and they're all eating sheep dairy products, but also they're paying top dollar to witness this. Now, there's another whole different angle to this. There's bloody tourism.
Yeah.
Who would even think? Anyway, it just goes on and on. The more I looked at it, the more exciting it got. And anyway, so everything was going good. Now, my Canadian shepherds, amazing, just amazing. And I'm really proud I got to teach my 3 sons to be shepherds. They were excellent shepherds. And they worked their way through university purely on their shepherding wages. I didn't pay a penny towards their education. I said, you get your shepherding wages and you go after scholarships, do whatever you want, but your income is from shepherding, and then in the winter you go to school. Anyway, you wouldn't think you'd get away with it, but I gave them all a puppy, and here's your sheepdog, right, and start training your dog. Anyway, these kids turned into excellent shepherds, and after a while they're running the whole thing, eh? And but I've got to brag about my fine sons going to university. When I told them I won't pay for your university, it's up to you to use your shepherding wages, you wouldn't think you'd get away with it. Anyway, brag about my youngest son. He went to Princeton for 4 years, top honor student in Princeton in political science. Then he went to Harvard for another 7 years. So now he's Dr. Loxton of political science, and he's down at the University of Sydney University teaching Australians about politics. So I think, yeah, well done, kid. That's, well done, little shepherd.
Yeah.
And my other son is also a doctor of paleontology back east at Dalhousie, teaching people about rocks. My other son, brilliant artist, award-winning author, and I'm just so proud of all of them. But really, I believe that shepherding, I don't know, what do you say, made men out of them, and, well, they grew up in tree planting camps, so they grew up talking to university students about education, and also learning about, the hardship of being in the bush. And then next thing, they were shepherding for something like 17 years or something. And anyway, I'm so proud of that.
So I have a question. So it sounds like you starting in 1991, you started using sheeps in vegetation management in BC Forestry. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you're the pioneer that's kind of figure this out, that we can do this in BC.
Well, I'd say that
first patch.
The old guy who did the first experiment, I see him as the pioneer.
Right.
And then I'd go and visit him, he'd befriend him. He's a really nice guy, and he'd take you out and try to teach you more about sheep. And the way Australians work sheep, it's all, rush, motorbikes, and everyone's in a hurry and all of that. The whole Canadian way of is a proper traditional shepherding. And so this, tough old bushwhacker was actually a very skilled sheep man, and he was able to share it with us and give us some pointers about how to make it work better, right? Okay, so, 6,000 sheep, 4 projects. So now, these Canadian shepherds, what we did at first, you can't just find Canadian shepherds, right? But you put out the feelers, so we were able to get one Hutterite to come out and help us, 4th generation sheep man, right? There was a French couple who were real traditional shepherds. They'd been up in the Alps training under Basques and just, really skilled shepherds. There was one shepherd who'd worked for the Molliettes down in Wavenby, herding in the Alpine, so we got him. Anyway, we got these 4 guys to train our Canadian youth how to be shepherds, and it really worked. These kids were amazing. And I should show you some photos of what this looks like.
Yeah, just for those people listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, this is the podcast, and then we'll highly recommend you for this episode, go to YouTube.
Yeah. Because
Dennis got some fascinating photos to show you guys. So if you don't mind, Dennis, just make sure everything's being captured.
So, can you see that?
Yeah, perfectly.
So what's going on there? Every photo is 1,500 sheep. So there, 1,500 sheep, 3 shepherds, 8 guard dogs, and this is a plantation just north of Prince George. They do about 4 to 5 hectares per day, and you can give the forester, some want it taken down like a lawn, some want 6 inches of left of vegetation. Anyway, you can give them whatever you want, and the whole thing really works. Now, of course, bears show up, and the guard dogs go after them, and in most cases, it's not a hassle at all. However, every now and again, there's one that is a hassle, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So, okay, I'll just go through like this. So here, you can see the vegetation. Here it's done. Here's your seedling. They would have grazed it in the spring, so you got all that leader growth. And there's the guard dogs and the shepherds just hanging out. Does that work?
Yeah, it's working perfectly.
Okay. Guardian dogs, livestock guardian dogs.
That's so cute, by the way. I love that photo so much.
Yeah,
a lamb. Is that a lamb? That's a lamb, right?
Yeah.
Hey,
No,
okay.
What's happened here, what the story is how you train these guardian dogs. When they're puppies, you get a ewe that's about the lamb, and you can see by how big she is, she's going to have twins. And if she's good enough quality, you think you're probably going to keep those twins, assuming they're ewe lambs. Then you get this is a Great Pyrenees. So you get and they have and you try to get them to have their lambs, their puppies, right at lambing time. So this ewe's mother would have just had her, and then we'd grab him and grab a bunch of afterbirth, and slop it all over him. And she's busy having her second lamb, and we drop it down behind her with her first lamb, and she looks around, and she just had twins and this puppy, and she licks them all clean, and they all befriend each other, and they grow up together. Now, why this photo is so powerful is this ewe has left the flock to come and walk side by side with her childhood buddy, and they're leaning against each other just through love, right? And these dogs, they just like big, friendly tail waggers. You can own one all its life and never see it get angry. But the truth is, they're just meaner than a junkyard dog. Like, they are really tough animals. And so they're just being big, happy tail waggers with the lambs and all that. As soon as the wolf comes or the bear, they just turn into lions, and they are absolutely bloody, shockingly vicious. So, however, you could own, like, I know people that have bought a puppy for their child, and they say, oh, well, he's not really a guard dog. He's just a big tail wagger. And my daughter rides him, and we love him, so we keep him. But he's not a guard dog. And I just think, you have no clue what you're talking about. If some kidnapper or some evil something tried to harm that child, that dog would instantly turn into just a meaner than a junkyard dog, and they're just vicious. It's unbelievable.
Because you have one of those dogs,
we have a Maremma.
Yeah, well, same deal. Yeah, slightly different ways of working. What we used to try to do was put together 8 of Pyrenees, Maremma, and Hungarian Kuvas all mixed together, and each one have his different powerful points.
Do you use Australian Shepherd or like Border Collie? Those?
No, well, Border Collies are great herding dogs, so we used to use them. And plus, there's a half dingo Australian herding dog called Australian Kelpie, and I thought I was going to import him just because I didn't. I'm so amazed at how I've seen them perform in droughts and that, but someone had already imported them like 50 years ago. They're already in Canada.
Right.
And so all you had to do is track them down and buy puppies. And in fact, I found that with everything we thought we were going to need. Amazed me that Canada already had everything we needed. They had amazing guardian dogs. They had amazing sheep. The shepherds were here, to train our guys. The whole thing... Or even the sheep corral mobile, you do your research, what's the best mobile sheep corral in the world? Well, they're made in New Zealand. Okay, we'll get some of them. It turned out some guy was already importing them. All we had to do is ring him up and say, bring us 4 sets of them.
Wow. Sorry, do you mind to bring up that dog photo again? Adam and I just had some questions about the dog training part. Like, how do you even train the dog to be a shepherd dog?
Which...
Like the one with the dog and lamb walking together?
Yeah. Okay, well, really, you don't have to train them to do anything.
What? Is it just like...
They just want to hang out with the flock. And they've been guarding sheep for 10,000 years. And,
wow.
And people don't like you saying this, but man's been eating dogs for more or less 10,000 years. Some countries still do it. And so any guardian dogs that didn't guard, they just basically threw them on the barbie, and get another dog. And this has been going on, this ruthless, for 10,000 years. So now you just go and buy one, and you don't have to even think about if he's going to guard.
It's all just instincts.
They don't know how to not guard. They just guard. And they, like I just think that photo really does say it all.
It is a fascinating, beautiful photo.
It does, for sure.
Again, go on YouTube.
Yeah,
check it out.
Definitely worth it to check out these photos.
Okay, this photo. So this is north of Prince George. This is North Fraser. You can see how high and dense the vegetation is. You can see here it's gone. It's done. You can see the seedlings there, untouched. And we're dealing with loggers and all of that. The whole thing worked. We found loggers actually really encouraging. So... for instance, when we'd move from this block to the next block, there'd be logging trucks on the road, and we'd be talking to them on the radio, and they'd have to stop and wait for us, And they were always really nice and really encouraging, and so
The loggers are?
yeah,
Oh.
yeah. So that all worked.
That's just a great photo. A cut block and logging road, logging truck driving by
Yep.
with a whole bunch of sheeps.
This is one of those Australian kelpies I was talking about.
Okay.
That's that was me personal dog. They're just wonderful herding dogs.
Mm-hmm.
But they cross them with dingoes to toughen them up here.
Yeah.
Just another photo of a sheep. Now, okay, so there's your leader growth. There's how high the vegetation was. Here it's done.
And the sheep haven't even, in the
Haven't
photo,
even
they
taken
haven't
a
even
bite.
touched the tree.
No.
That's so. You took those photos, or do you have somebody else that took those photos for you?
No, I took them all.
That's a great photo. Those are
Okay,
great
so
photos.
there's another nice photo. I really like this photo. This girl was an amazing shepherd. She worked for me for, I think, 12 years. Also, highballer tree planter, right?
Nice.
I bet.
So now she's a vet, got her own practice, doing great, but just a really gifted shepherd, eh?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my dream lifestyle actually. Get a herd of sheep, and just go roaming around in the bush. Wow.
Yeah.
Rain or shine, no problem. Shepherds just get to work.
Yeah. That's amazing. You have sheep in just that one photo.
Yeah.
They look so happy, sheep and shepherd.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so this is up in Hazelton. The bridge is, you can see the bridge is gone, caving in here. On the other side of the bridge, the stringers are in the river. So it's only half a bridge. Once you get the first sheep to go across, the rest of them will follow, usually. And these guys were very skilled shepherds, and the whole thing really worked. So you go across the other side of the river and graze off that plantation, and, then it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And when was those photos taken? Like 2000, early 2000-ish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Once again, that's that one shepherd. Her name was Ruth. But look at that. Is she guarded or what?
Yeah.
I mean, and yet they're all smiling tail waggers, eh?
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, the bear will come. No matter where you take your sheep, you're in someone's backyard. There's a bunch of coyotes live there. There's wolves that pass through. There's a bear who's got that on his menu. You show up, the bears will come and check you out, and the dogs just go after them. Now, they don't bite them, but they put on such a display of viciousness, the bear usually just says, okay, I'm out of here. I'll go and catch salmon or something easier.
Just a quick question on this. I have a couple questions on this photo. So this is a cut block by Prince George, right?
Yes.
So this is because those are white flower rhododendron? Are those?
I don't know.
Because I work in high elevation.
Yeah.
They call it ESSF, whatever, like it's in the subalpine area.
Yeah.
There are a lot of those. Like
Yeah.
when you walk by, I would just picture how the plant is going to regrow them because the rhododendron is so thick.
Yep.
So just curious, are sheep eating those? Like, are they
Well,
like munching on everything here, or which one's their preference?
Well,
like,
in this case, the client didn't want it taken down to dirt, but that's what they wanted. But when you start looking at it, it was probably at least 4 foot high before we came there. So they've done a serious reduction.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess depends on the client's requirement. And then you just let them, if they want them to be more severely graded, just let them sit there for a couple more days.
That's exactly. It's about how fast you move the flock.
Is there like any certain vegetation that can cause harm to sheep that's in the wild?
There's some poisonous plants out there, and
How do you deal with that with the
what
sheep
happens?
on the
This is a
landscape?
weird thing to say. Every now and again, there will be a sheep who will eat a mouthful of poison plant, and then they look terrible,
Yeah.
and sometimes dying. And as far as I'm concerned, they go back to the flock and they tell everybody, don't eat that. Because when we've had an issue with poison plants, we only would lose one, like, per flock.
Okay,
right?
wow.
So
I
they
know it
communicate.
Yeah.
yeah, they tell each other, don't eat that stuff.
That's crazy.
Okay, so here's your logging landing, mobile corral around it, your trailers for these shepherds. That's my horse trailer. This is for hay, and we move this every week.
Mm-hmm.
So everything there is really mobile, and you rehab the landings, and the sheep are more comfortable when they're not standing in mud.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah. It's amazing.
1,500 sheep, 3 shepherds, 8 guard dogs. And in fact, around Prince George, we only used to have 4 guard dogs.
Okay.
We only started using 8 when we went up to Stewart. Stewart, there's another story. We built this farm here thinking we were going to be grazing neighboring plantations, right? Anyway, it turned out the whole low bid nonsense, and they awarded the contracts here to someone else, and we were offered contracts up in Stewart, and wow, the grizzlies and the wolves and everything up in Stewart, they're all so much bigger than you realize.
Yeah.
And in fact, I thought I had a clue how big grizzly bears get. You get all the documentaries and try to figure it out, right? One day, 2 grizzlies showed up at that on our plantation, and it was absolutely shocking how big they were. And
Humongous.
someone
big.
later told us they were probably Kodiak bears who come in from further up north. Oh, okay, but like you're not used to something looking that big and that bad, eh? I mean, and they don't even care. They're not afraid of anything.
Yeah.
And when 8 guard dogs go after them, they take a swat at a few and all that, and then they just go, I'm going to go and catch salmon instead. They just leave.
Yeah.
Now, we had a project in McBride, and we had a bear interaction, a different bear come to visit the flock every day for 39 consecutive days. That's 39 different bears. And the shepherds were all, these are Prince George kids standing there in McBride watching the grizzly or whatever bear. And what they did, the guard dogs would always just chase it away. And after a while, the shepherds get so confident in that they just find it entertaining that, see what happens to this bear. And anyway, what they realized after, we were on a wildlife corridor going from the valley bottom up to the Alpine Range where they're going up to range. And basically every bear in the neighborhood had to walk right past us in order to go. But they didn't eat any sheep. Nothing happened. Although I've got to tell you, there was a contract we had down in Revelstoke, and no, hang on, where was it? No, Hazelton, and a big old grizzly showed up, right? Big skinny old guy, didn't give a shit, came in and just whacked 5 sheep, didn't care about the guard dogs, didn't care about anything.
Yeah.
Picked up one and left, right?
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And we're standing, going like, well, we can't deal with this. We're not allowed to shoot him. We don't want to shoot him.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowed to shoot him?
Well, no, it's not cool to shoot. One of the
That's a
things we
grizzly
go
bear.
along saying is we will not shoot anything. We do not want to shoot anything.
Right.
A huge part of this, our statement is we're at peace with all creatures. We don't go along killing everything.
Love it.
And but also we don't even have to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our shepherds don't carry rifles. They don't. It just seems like, I don't know, something stupid like carry something else big and heavy around with you.
Yeah.
They just think the guard dogs will do it all. Now, if there's a bad bear there, our company policy is all the shepherds jump in the middle of the flock with the attitude, if he's really hungry, he's going to get a sheep, not me, right? So that all works, but really, it rarely is a problem. In the case of this big old cranky one, it was hopeless. You just call in the trucks and you relocate. Of the 5 sheep it hit, 4 were dead. He picked up one, carried away. Another one had the side of her face smashed. Her eye came out. And but she survived, and the shepherds would take care of her and give her special treatment and looked after her. We were so proud of her because how many sheep survive a grizzly bear attack, right?
Yeah.
But the side of her face was just completely busted. And
He must be a star in that flock, eh? He's going to tell all his buddies.
Oh, yeah.
I got smacked by a bear and then lived. Lived to tell the tale.
Hey, we used to treat it like that. We used to say, yeah, this sheep, pretty ugly, but it survived a grizzly attack. That's
Yeah.
good enough. But, okay, what else have I got? Okay, so you've seen that one.
Yeah. That just like a typical... people working around Prince George, you can see the hellebore, you can see some those are raspberries, and
Yeah.
some of these stuff they're just really, hard to regrow.
Yeah.
Those raspberry, when they open up, they just go crazy.
Yep.
Yep.
They do.
They get
Yeah,
so thick, and it's fascinating. Sounds like the business went pretty well for a while, hey?
It went really well, and where the sheep were great, the farmers were happy, the shepherds were going off to university, and the whole thing was working. Our farm here worked beautifully. We had lamb crops and all of that. One day, one day, all at the same time, all the licensees said, "Right, we're going to spray Roundup now."
Do you remember when? Do you have a date? Like somewhere around 1980, 80-ish? Because 74 is when the Roundup...
No, I don't know the date offhand. But before, there were 50,000 sheep grazing plantations in BC for veg management. 50,000. Now, given that the biggest sheep farmer in BC has 1,000, to have an industry that quickly grows up to 50,000, and all the shepherds and all the guard dogs and all of it, it's just amazing that happened. And right at its peak, they shut it down. And so suddenly we're all going, well, what do we do now? And for example, my farm, my 1,000-acre farm here, can winter 1,000 sheep, but you need all the fields to grow hay for the winter, right?
Yeah.
So we actually didn't have any summer grazing. After the hay is off and after the sheep come out of the bush, we would do another grazing of the farm. But really, we needed summer grazing, and that is what limits the size of the BC sheep industry, is the simple lack of cheap, predator-free summer grazing. But plantation changed all that. But then when they pulled the plug on it, and we're talking the Camphors of the world, all of them, suddenly those 50,000 sheep, well, here's something. We'd encouraged farmers to get more sheep. A guy would have 600, and we'd say, well, can't you count 1,000? And, I'd have to build another barn. Well, at what point did Hutterites have a problem with building another barn? Anyway, the next thing, they would get 1,000 sheep, and these are the best you could get, right? And anyway, suddenly we're sending all the sheep home, and we're saying, and we can't take them anymore. And I'd say, well, we don't have grazing for them. You encourage us to get too many sheep. Anyway, meanwhile, there was some other politics that happened. There was mad cow, right? So when mad cow hit America, they banned cow, elk, bison, and sheep exports to the States. Well, a lot of these farmers, their main market was the States, because Canadians like a 100-pound lamb, Greeks like a 30-pound lamb, Americans like a 130-pound lamb. The hard part is getting it up to 100 pounds. To pump it up to another 30 pounds, it's only, feed, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that extra bucks for selling to the American market. Well, suddenly that was all cut off. Everyone had too many sheep now because we had no summer grazing, and the whole thing just crashed and burned. But also, some of the nonsense with foresters awarding contracts to, people with foot rot, for example. They would, some of the Hutterite flocks would get foot rot, and then that's just a mess, right? And my attitude about foot rot, like you can foot bath them in chemicals and over a long time cure it, but really it doesn't really work. The best thing, if a guy gets foot rot, is you just send them all to slaughter, and you go and you let your land rest, because these little creatures can live in the ground for whatever 3 weeks or something. And then you go and buy some more high quality lambs. Start again.
Foot rot is it's like an infection in the foot that the sheep
it's
can
a
get?
little critter that lives in the foot, and they get in through a little crack.
Yeah.
They can live in the soil for whatever 3 weeks, and then once it's in there, it just eats the inside of the foot.
Okay,
and it's just a terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah.
It's really cruel, and they limp. You'll see them. Instead of bending down to eat grass, they're on their knees eating grass and stuff like that.
It's not no good.
Yeah, but if a forester hires a contractor who the sheep industry knows he's got foot rot, but he's a lower bidder. Now, did they just sabotage that on purpose, or was that just incompetence, or what happened? But I saw that happen a lot.
Yeah.
Like towards the end when they were.
So sorry, go ahead.
Could that foot rot pass to like wildlife, like deer and elk and all that kind of stuff? Yeah.
Yes, it's transferable to ungulates.
Yeah. Okay.
And because it can live in the soil, let's say I don't even know if it's 3 weeks or a month.
You can spread it really easily.
But it is a serious fear amongst fish and wildlife guys. And so when they first started this thing in 1991, they got, I think, 4 doctors. Doctor of agriculture, doctor of whatever. Anyway, 4 doctors, and they devised a health protocol that all sheep running on plantations have to comply with this health protocol. So they have to be shorn, they have to have their feet trimmed, they have to have this many vaccinations, different kinds, and foot bathing, just in case they had foot rot. And so this is all very, very strict. Then you got a government-approved vet inspects all of them. So all the 50,000 sheep.
Every single one of them.
Yes.
Wow.
And imagine the vet bill for all of this,
Yeah.
right? And these are sheep specialist vets, and Anyway, it was all working except when it crashed and burned. you know. And I don't know whether Anyway, I don't know if it was sabotage or just incompetence, but they did some really stupid things. And anyway, so next thing, I've got nowhere for my sheep to eat, right? Plus, at the same time as the mad cow thing happened, there was a softwood lumber dispute. And I went in to renew my mortgage, and the banker says, because of this American thing, we're not lending money to anybody in logging or farming. And you're in both, I'm sorry, but you're out of here.
Brutal.
Yeah, and so, anyway, you have to sell your sheep for slaughter. And this is all these dairy sheep I'd been breeding, right? Sell them all for slaughter. Then you can't make your farm payments, and eventually they drag you off to court because you owe them $149,000 on a $1.5 million farm. And anyway, they dragged me off to court 6 times. I won every time. Except for the 6th time, you walk out of there, you're not a farmer anymore. You're homeless. And not only that, they give you a bill for their lawyers to fight your lawyers. And the bill for that was $100,000. And it says it right there in your mortgage. If we try to foreclose on you and you fight us, you have to pay our lawyer to fight you. So that's the way it works with banking and farming. So suddenly, I've got no farm, no sheep, bloody homeless, and $100,000 bill for lawyers. So right there, you're in a mess, right? So, you try to hang in there, try to think you're going to contract your way out of it or whatever. But anyway, it didn't happen. So that's where I'm at now. Now, we also went to Alberta and got it started in Alberta, and it worked great. I did one contract over there, and then I went to then the client, really good guy, says, yeah, we want you to do this one here too. So, yeah, okay. But then Fish and Wildlife said, no, you cannot take a sheep in the bush if there's been a sighting of a wild sheep or goat within 50 miles.
Wild sheep?
Yes.
There's a wild sheep?
Yeah.
Mountain sheep.
Oh, those. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So
right.
Anyway, this contract was 40 kilometers from the last sighting of a wild sheep.
Right.
And suddenly you shit out of luck. No, you can't do that contract. Oh, okay. What I find is really interesting is the forest industry is relying very, very heavily on Roundup. Yeah. I don't know if it's good for you or bad for you. Canadians are spraying this amazingly beautiful country with Roundup on a big scale, more than most people realize. As far as I'm concerned, they don't have to spray any of it. They could use sheep, and then the Canadians could eat the sheep, right? To me, it seems so simple. But anyway, they're not listening, and so they're just spraying like crazy. And but not only that, Canadians, some of them are grumbling about it, but really most of them don't care. But also they're spraying your food. The prairies are getting sprayed with Roundup, glyphosate, right? Even worse still, they're using it to kill the grain before harvest. So instead of waiting for it to dry, so you can come along and harvest your oats for your morning porridge, they come along and spray it all with Roundup, and then they harvest it, so it's still got the Roundup on it, even though like it was given a couple of doses of Roundup before the final spraying. So your daily bread is drenched in Roundup. Your wine, everything that you eat is pretty well drenched in Roundup. Now, I don't know if it's good for you or not. Right? Really, I have no training or anything about spraying chemicals or anything. I should share. I got a chip on my shoulder about spraying. Okay. Now, when I was 17, I got sprayed with a agricultural chemical, and it hurt for about 4 years, and I'm scarred from here. All this is all scars.
Wow.
Neck, but luckily I washed my face, so it didn't happen to my face. But this looks like old guy wrinkles, but really it's all scars.
Wow.
So, so really all I know about chemical spraying is as soon as you say you're going to spray chemicals, my brain says, run away, run away. And that's really all I know. I don't know anything else about it. For Canada's sake, I really hope it's good for you because everyone's eating it. And
maybe I can say something on this. We whether it's good or bad, there's lots of research happening right now, and the glyphosate came out in 1974 or 76, somewhere around there. So they say because it's water soluble chemical.
Yep. So
they say that it goes into the body, takes 14 days ish to go out of your body.
Yeah.
But the study right now is about the gut microbiome. The things that live in your gut, how much impact it have on them, and then entire body, and then each individual component of the ecosystem, the fish, Dr. Lisa Wood right now is doing research on the vegetation.
Yeah.
What kind of after spraying, what kind of vegetation today, their response, their nutrient availability, and where can they find herbicide-based. Glyphosate-based herbicides and all these. So there are a lot of studying happening right now, and so there's debate, there's dispute, there's a back and forth, and
my attitude is, I believe I've had a really good look at Western Canada, right?
Yeah.
More than most people because I've been at the end of the road for 50 years, all over the place, and the more I do it, the more I think this place is unbelievably beautiful. I mean, we think of salmons this big going up a waterfall and all that, like it's normal, right? We don't even think it's a big deal, but other countries don't have this. And I think this country is so beautiful.
Amazingly
and the fact
beautiful.
That spraying it, I just hope it's not bad for you, that's all. But anyway, the other thing is, Canadians have been really nice to me, right? You can't have, 200 tree planters without getting a bit of a look at what Canadians really think. Mm-hmm. And they've all been bloody nice to me. And you go, well, why are you spraying this amazingly beautiful country? But also, I see there's some grumbling going on, and here's a weird thing to say about Canadians, but they are slow to anger. Okay, that's a weird thing to say, but it's true. But also, they are really stubborn. So once they anger, they're not going to budge after that. They're slowly getting upset about Roundup spraying, and the moose populations, they say they aren't doing well and all this kind of thing. Eventually, I expect that the Canadians will just simply say, no, we're not spraying, no more spraying in BC, right? Or whatever.
I work in Mackenzie a lot. They stopped spraying a long time ago. Prince George, I think 2019 was when they stopped broadcasting, which is like a large scale, cut block spraying.
Yep.
But it's still used for invasive species management, along highways and stuff. Yeah. And some of those. So there's still usage for...
Oh, no, they're spraying quite happily, and there's more than we know. But anyway, so one of these days, Canadians are going to say, okay, stop spraying our forests, right? Yeah. Now, it doesn't affect me because I'm gone, and I'm trying to stop working. I don't want to think about it anymore. And so that's why I'm saying, well, one of these days. And at that point, the foresters are going to go, well, we lost Roundup. What are we going to do now? And the only other tool they've got that works is sheep, right? However, and so they just, because of how foresters think, they think, okay, we'll just advertise and a bunch of idiots like Dennis will show up and outbid the other idiot, and we'll get someone to show up with 1,500 sheep. The sheep farmers of Alberta are so upset about how they were treated that they're not available. So
sheep's they are not available.
Yeah, the sheep are not available for rent anymore. So if I suddenly got a contract tomorrow and went out and bang on a bunch of Hutterite doors and I want to sign up your sheep, they'd say, no, we're not even interested. Now, a few things is, in order to get their sheep up to 80 pounds so they can, graze plantations, they'd have to lamb them in, say, January, and it'd be minus 30. So they're dealing with cold all the time at lambing time. Well, if you're not going to kick them out bush, well, then you could lamb in the summer, right? And so a lot of them have just simply changed their lambing schedule, and they're lambing in the summer. So you can't bring sheep onto a plantation and lamb out there. It just doesn't happen, right? But another thing that happened is solar panel businesses approached these Hutterite sheep farmers and said, we want to put solar panels on your farm. We will pay you this much an acre. And so what they would do is they'd give them the less desirable land, which is generally where the sheep all lived, and they would cover it with solar panels, and then the farmer would get the contract to do the veg management on the solar farm. So basically he's getting paid to rent his land to them. He's getting paid to graze his own farm, right? And they're all expanding, not all, but anyway, many of them. Guys who used to think 1,000 sheep, that's the maximum, we need this size barn, we don't want any more. Now some of these guys are getting 3,000 and 4,000 sheep and building barns that hold 3,000 and 4,000 sheep. Like a serious big operation. And no, they're not interested in sending their sheep to BC. So when I was watching John Brink interview with you the other day, I found it really interesting. And one of the things about John, firstly, I've been to Holland. I really enjoyed Holland. And the Dutch people, they don't mess around, right? What I wanted to see there was a total utilization of the land. There's not a square foot wasted there. Whereas here we think nothing of having endless miles of nothing going on, right? Yeah. Anyway, so here's John Brink. He was a cabinet maker who took a proper apprenticeship. He's a proper cabinet maker, right? Now, a Dutch cabinet maker, they're artists, they're fanatics, right? So for him to come here and run into just how many endless tons of board ends that were this long and this wide and this thick, and just beautiful, beautiful wood. Like there's not a knot in it. And I saw these same tonnages, but in my country, we're just short of wood. But he's a guy who looks at a piece of wood and he sees it dovetailed, and it'll be a beautiful piece of this cabinet he's going to make, right? So when I was watching him get a shock at seeing these, who cares, thousands of tons of this going into burners and into chippers, the shock that he got. And I feel like, hey, I can relate to that. That's exactly what happened to me when I come from drought Australia and I'm seeing plantations with grass this high on them, or vegetation this high, and I'm just kind of like, look at all the grass, look at all the sheep feed, and it's exactly what happened to John Brink in a different style, eh? And one of the things that happened, taking sheep up to Stewart, apart from the grizzlies and everything up there is huge, and there seems to be more of them. Like in 1 week we saw 8 different grizzlies on one project, right? And anyway, after the whole thing was over, a forester I know got the contract to go and do the free-to-grow surveys on all those plantations. Now, we took 6,000 sheep up to Stewart, up to Mesiaden Junction for 5 consecutive years. Now, when we first went there, the forester, he was absolutely, he didn't have a clue what to do. They'd got the tree planters in to plant the plantations, and the vegetation was 6 to 8 foot high, of the most lush vegetation I've ever seen anywhere in my life.
So right? Where was this again?
What?
Where was the Stewart?
This is Mesiaden Junction out of Stewart, 100 clicks from Stewart.
Okay. You know what
and
yeah, I'm just trying to picture what it is on my brain.
Well,
never mind.
For how it was explained to me is interior vegetation hits a coastal rainfall and this stuff just explodes. Like, it's unbelievable, and high protein, unbelievable.
It's probably an SBS VK type hay.
No, mainly fireweed.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
Anyway,
never mind. Yeah.
So then the forester takes me out on his plantation, and they've got 4-foot stakes planted near every tree. So they've got tree planters coming along planting trees. They've got another guy with a hammer and a stake, a bundle of stakes coming along and marking every tree.
Oh, wow.
And then the idea being that manual brushes will be able to find a tree and manual brush 1 meter around it, because they were worried about snow press and just general competition, right? Anyway, it wasn't working at all. And when that guy found out, he says, so you can remove all of this? And, yep. Do you need stakes? No, we don't need any stakes. And right there he said, wow, like the stakes were costing us more than you're charging.
Oh, I bet. Oh, yeah.
So, okay, so this all worked. So after the whole industry was finished and everything, and I was unemployed, the forester that got the contract to go and do the free-to-grow surveys on all of those plantations we'd grazed, like it's a lot of hectares, 6,000 sheep for 5 years. So how many hectares did we do? And anyway, here it is some years later, and she gets a contract. So and she said, "You want a job as a plot monkey?" Yeah, I do. So we're going to do a plot. We're going to be 100 meters apart, and we're going to do a free-to-grow plot every 100 meters. So what that meant was I got to do plots all over all of the area that we'd grazed for 5 consecutive years for 6,000 sheep. And the thing is, it looked like a bloody Christmas tree farm. You wouldn't believe it. It was unbelievable. Yeah. Perfect, beautiful trees everywhere. Grizzy, am I allowed to say grizzy shit? Everywhere. Yeah. Like fish, clearly a wildlife paradise. The whole thing was just an absolute total success. Nobody cares because the licensee went up there, went bankrupt, and was half owned by the BC government, and they ripped everyone off, and it was just a mess. And nobody cares what happens to those plantations now. But I'm so proud I got to see it. And like, I knew it was going to be good, but I didn't expect it could possibly be that perfect. So, yeah.
Our UNBC Forestry Club, we have a Christmas tree farm, and then at the far corner we have an area that's so thick, it was brush way back, and then it was a land given to us, and then we're growing Christmas tree and sell it for profit, as a club, as a student-led project. Yeah. And then, we have an area in the back just so thick you can't even walk through it. There's like crisscross. We're doing manual brushing, using brush saws and chainsaws, obviously with all the safety gears.
The fact that you say the vegetation was so thick you can't walk through it. Now, I've been walking around on plantations. I've got more boots on the ground experience in silviculture than probably anybody you'll ever meet, right? Don't tell me you can't walk around on a plantation. I walked around 1 million of them, right? Well, not 1 million, but lots.
Yeah, I get.
Now, up in Stewart, I found I simply could not walk through that 8-foot vegetation. It's so dense, and you think you can, right? Because you can't accept, of course I can walk around a clear cut. What happens, you come driving in, you see the flock over there, and so you park here and you follow where the sheep have gone, and you go up and you have a talk to the shepherds and get everything sorted out, and then you got to run back and catch the forestry before they close, and you think you'll take meanwhile the flock has gone over there, you think you'll take a shortcut straight back there to your vehicle, and you walk along and you simply, anyway, I walked off the end of a gun barrel log, didn't even realize I'm walking on a log, fell over, and I just going, this is ridiculous.
This is ridiculous.
And then I start trying to go through it, and you go like, this is ridiculous. You cannot even walk through this. Like, that's how dense it is.
Yeah.
And yet the sheep turn all of that into fertilizer. I mean, it's amazing, eh?
That's amazing. So what happened to those 6,000 sheep after the 5-year project?
What's that?
What happened to the 6,000 sheep after that?
They just had to go back and live in Alberta, but the farmer would have too many, so he'd have to unload a bunch to slaughter. It was a mess, and it really caused a lot of grief. And so the next thing is, one of these days, forest companies are going to lose the right to spray Roundup. They think they're just going to get a bunch of sheep, and some idiot's going to come and, I believe they treated us like idiots, so that's why I feel comfortable saying that. But what they're going to find is there are no sheep available. So if, say, John Brink is going to try to buy those CAN4 licenses, now the chances are they've been sprayed right up to date. But then his logging henceforth, if he's logging and doesn't have and loses Roundup, the only way he's going to be able to grow good plantations is by getting sheep. And but because the Albertans aren't interested in renting them to him, what he's going to have to do is build a couple of sheep farms here, and basically do what I was trying to do, and then. I'm really impressed with Dutchmen, and so I might say things that might sound sarcastic about Dutchmen. They can't help themselves. They cannot build a farm that's just ugly, like it has to be productive. It's just how they are. Their barns are perfect. It's all very, very high-end farming. Now, if he's got to have his own sheep farms in BC to graze off his own plantations, I expect he would probably buy some farms, and then when he starts looking into it, he's going to run into the whole sheep cheese opportunity, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him farming Dutch dairy sheep right here in Prince George, one in Smithers, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And farming plantations, like the plantation and the farm should all be basically all in the same deal, right? And I believe that's what the future is for BC forestry. But when? Well, I don't know when they lose Roundup. But when they lose Roundup, everything has got to change. They can talk about manual brushes. Manual brushes, they can't do anything. They can't... it's just too expensive, and they do accidentally cut down seedlings all the time. They can't see them in the grass, eh?
They're not also pretty slow, and I guess it depends on the experience of the operator. So some just go super fast, and some is like me, or I'm just like turtle speed. Yeah. But I just want to say I have 2 comments basically. So the whole reason of this whole brush management is because this free to grow policy that they came out, when they
well, part of this, these plantations that we were invited to were doomed. The seedlings were all dying from too much vegetation. It's that simple. You're talking about a dead plantation or fix it like this. And that's why we were there. Those seedlings up in Mesierden Junction up near Stewart, there was absolutely no way they were going to possibly survive. And for us, it turned into look like just a beautiful bloody, photo opportunity of far what a plantation could really look like. It was just beautiful. And some of those blocks, there were resident grizzly bears on there. Sometimes we'd be grazing off a block and there'd be a bear at the other end of the block, and the dogs didn't bug him and he didn't bug the sheep, and he'd be there for a week, and it worked, We've only ran into a couple of incidents where the bear was, big and skinny and sick, and who cares what old, eh? However, there is an incident we had, I should share with you. The guard dogs, 8 of them, caught a wolf and beat him up. And then,
beat a wolf up?
Yeah, and then, but there's 8 dogs.
Oh, yeah.
Taking it in turns, right? And then they let him go. But obviously they hurt the wolf. So he'd crawled into a slash pile, and the shepherds walk past that slash pile every day to try to figure out if he can smell a dead animal or did the wolf go off and live happily ever after. Anyway, so they're grazing along, right? This is, who cares, a couple of weeks later. And there was just a terrible storm, and the worst sheet lightning that any of these shepherds had ever seen in their life. The forester was in a cabin, and she was hiding in her cabin because it was too terrifying. Right in the middle of that, suddenly there's wolves all howling. The shepherds are trying to take the flock back to camp, and worrying about getting struck by a sheet lightning. The dogs hate lightning and any kind of storm. They just, totally, they're not working, right? And right in the middle of that, the wolf showed up and killed the biggest guard dog. Just tore his throat out. There was no point in taking him to the vet. He was a goner. Now, all that happened right in the middle of a bloody terrible lightning storm, and we have no doubt that the wolf said, look, we tried to be reasonable, you killed one of our guys, and now we fix you. Like that really happened. Now, I wouldn't have dreamed that there would be that kind of interaction and that kind of understanding between the dogs and the wolves. But like wherever you go, you're in someone's backyard, and they do come and check it out, right?
Mm-hmm. That sounds like cocky, hey? Yeah. If you knock somebody down, somebody's going to come and knock you down.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But to go after the biggest, like it's the biggest guard dog we'd ever seen, and just with all this lightning going on and all the dogs are cringing and that, and wolves just come in and kill our best dog, well, not necessarily best, but biggest dog, and just no doubt he is dead. There's nothing anybody could do about it. No point in rushing him off 100 clicks to the vet or something. No point.
Totally.
And another thing, okay, these guard dogs. I saw a guy with a Great Pyrenees recently on some kind of, on the computer, and he was saying these are the toughest dogs around, and people were challenging and saying, what about pit bulls? And he's saying, this thing would just eat pit bulls, right? And people were upset about it. No way, right? Anyway, I've seen dog fights between these dogs and an ordinary dog, and there's no dog fight. There's just a dead dog right now with a strength and efficiency you're just shocked at. Now, we had we had 2 Great Pyrenees brothers and a Hungarian Kuvas big male, like they're all big. Anyway, the 2 brothers were on separate projects, and then anyway, so the the Cuvas beat up the Pyrenees and said, you know, you go and stand over there, right? Don't come so close to camp because there's a pecking order who gets to sleep next to the boss girl's trailer, for example. Anyway, so then somehow we brought the other Pyrenee onto this one, and now both brothers beat up that one, right? Beat up the Cuvas. Now this all happened right in front of us, and myself and another shepherd are standing there. We've got shepherd's crooks, and this happened, just an explosion right in front of us, and we were able to get our shepherd's crooks on the collars of the two Pyrenees and pull them off of the Cuvas, and he's already there doing the chicken, right? And we made we could see he had to go to the vet right now. Now this took seconds, right? So we took our shepherd's crooks and our sweatshirts and made a bush stretcher and put the dog on and rushed him into town and took him to the vet, and he was, you know, barely alive at this point. And the vet said, we said, look, just hit him with everything you got. He's a really good dog. Try to save the dog. And the vet said, did the truck stop after he ran over your dog? And we said, no, this was a dog fight. He said, look, this dog has been ran over by a truck. And we said, look, it was a dog fight. It lasted seconds. It happened right in front of us. That's all that happened to this dog. Anyway, the guy's going, look at the broken bones. He's got his ruptured. He's, you know, this dog is clearly, you know, I'm going to try to help him, but he's almost dead. Anyway, dog died. And that vet refused to believe that that was a dog fight. Wow. Now, that's the power of these animals. Like, it's incomprehensible, really. And, yeah, how we doing?
We have about 20 minutes left. I just want to put on, like, the forester hat and then figure out if we want to use sheep for our silviculture practices nowadays, and then what can we do. So Adam probably have some questions for some of the money side of things.
Yeah, so what is the longevity of a sheep? Like, if you put it out on the landscape, like, how many years could you get from that out of a use of a sheep?
About 10.
About 10 years?
Yeah, maybe 9.
Yeah.
There's a point where they're too old to have lambs, and at that point they just ship them off to Campbell's soup.
Okay, yeah, and, for sure.
And like I said, they have about 150 lambs a year. When you, 150% lamb crop. A lot of guys will brag, 180% lamb crop. Now, I forget what I was going to say.
No worries. And then what are the costs to, like, run a sheep herd? Like, just, like, overall a year kind of thing?
Yeah, I really don't know, just because I haven't done it for a few years now. And all the prices have changed, right?
For sure, totally.
But there's no plantation available. Nobody's even interested.
Exactly.
So, also the other thing is, I've tried not to work, right? I'm trying to be retired, and it's really hard because you keep thinking you got to get out, and I'm 75 years old. I don't feel old. I look in the mirror, there's this old guy there saying he's me. I used to have red hair. I recently got a haircut. There wasn't nothing but white hair lying on the floor. There's a point I had to just try to get the name in my head, stop working. The reason this podcast was important to me is because I want it recorded for all time that sheep can save plantations in BC. All the things that people will tell you is wrong with it, no, it's not true. There's nothing wrong with it. You just guard dogs and good health protocol and real shepherds, say.
For sure.
And these shepherds said start working at sheep like to start eating at 5 in the morning, and the shepherds would put themselves on the same schedule as sheep. Here's another silly thing. Every now and again you'll see some shepherd do something like, amongst real shepherds, I can't really claim to be a shepherd. No matter how many times I ran around on plantations, if I was to stand there amongst real, let's say, shepherds in the Pyrenees and claim to be a shepherd, that, okay, I was But meanwhile, I've been looking at sheep eat grass for many years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, recently, there was 1,500 sheep. What happens is they eat until they're full, and then they just lay down and rest and chew their cud for a few hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then meanwhile, the shepherds generally just go to sleep. So I'm sitting there with a shepherd, French shepherd, trained in the Alps, right? A real shepherd. And we're both getting our coffee thermos out. We both know we're going to be sitting there for 4 hours, right? And anyway, and I'm pouring my coffee, and one of the sheep goes, meh, meh, just nothing, right? And then one over there goes, meh. And the girl says, wait, they're going to run for water. They're going to go. And I said, like, hang on, I just got my coffee out.
Yeah.
How do you know?
And she's just putting her stuff in the bag, and she said, they're going to run for water right now.
Yeah.
And to me, the sheep all look relaxed and happy, apart from these two that have a little talk about nothing. And suddenly they all just jumped up and went running down the road as fast as they go, and she was right there with them because she was quick enough to grab her stuff.
Wow.
I'm still feel like, hang on, I'm still
My coffee.
getting the thermos together, and I found myself going like, I thought I knew something about sheep, but I didn't know that. Like, how can this one go Matt and this one go Matt, and you can translate that they're all going to jump up and run away and have a drink of water?
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen, eh?
Yeah,
and
for
yet,
sure.
Once again, I have to say, like, the qualifications of real shepherds is unbelievable. And regrettably, I have to say I'm not really one. I'm a contractor.
For sure.
Oh, well, all good.
Yeah. Another question I had is with sheep, can you like replace the sheep? Can you also graze goats, and would they be the same effectiveness compared to sheep?
In fact, they graze well together. They get along. Goats are smarter and tend to be the flock leaders always.
Okay.
And so actually a lot of people believe that, you know, even just to have 20 goats in a 1,500 sheep flock, there's a bunch of leadership, right? That you can, you know, get them to go through the awkward place beside the swamp or whatever.
For sure,
you know?
yeah. Totally.
And, well, the only... Now, I don't know how many grazing contracts have been happening lately, but I've got a friend in Vanderhoof, and he's a logger, farmer. He's got sheep and goats, right? Now, he's only got, I think, 350 animals. And he did a contract for Camphor last year, and he did another for half a season, and the other half of the season down in Wells. He says from the plantation he was standing on, he could see 30 plantations that needed the same work, but nobody's doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Canfor asked him, well, are you actually interested? What if we need 1,000 sheep? And he'd say, well, if you give me a long-term contract, I'll gladly buy 1,000 sheep. And they go, well, no, we don't, you know. Oh, okay, so he's still only sticking to 350 animals.
Yeah.
They're just about to start lambing now. And, so the interest is there. There's a colony up in Dawson Creek. They were doing grazing contracts. I don't know if they did any last year. But anyway, yeah, so this whole thing was amazing, 50,000 sheep, and suddenly it's like 300 or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
You know, what a shame, eh?
It is.
Another crazy thing I ran into here is Canadians would say to me, well, we don't eat sheep. We hate eating sheep. And hang on, where did that come from, right? And because we grew up, we thought it was perfectly normal to, you know, eat mutton all the time, right? And anyway, it turns out that a lot of Canadian soldiers in the Second World War, the army bought them old ewes to eat, right? So they were getting these fat old ewes. This is going on in England and wherever, everywhere, and buying these, you know, sheep that people wouldn't normally eat, right? Tough, they smell too much like mutton, and they're fat, and and so anyway, all those soldiers that were forced to eat them, when they come back to Canada, there's no way they're going to ever eat a sheep again.
Yeah.
And they teach their children, no, we don't eat sheep, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a chunk of the Canadian population that don't eat sheep because of that. And I think, like, wow.
I've got a great recipe to cook sheep. Last year I actually went to my friend's farm down in Chilliwack, and I bought a full lamb because I'm trying to just get meat either myself by hunting and fishing or get like farm raised entire thing and then local kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so and I've figured out a couple recipe to try to cook sheep, different parts, different cuts, and they're amazing.
Yeah.
And depends on how you let them weather it, and it does. I understand why.
Yeah.
It has that little bit the I can't describe the game taste, like weird. It's not like beef, not like chicken. But you just need to cook it in the right way. There are lots of recipes online. They're great meat.
Yeah.
And people go out hunting. Sheep hunting is one of the most, hardest hunt ever. So when you get those sheep back, and then there's lots of way to cook them. They're delicious. So just more people can know. So maybe we're just probably gonna wrap this up right here. So for young people that want to get into this, because shepherd sounds amazing career.
Yeah.
Right. You just be out there in the block with the sheep and the dogs and your bears and just this outdoorsy kind of lifestyle attracts a lot of people.
Yeah.
How do do you think that could be a thing in the future? How do people even get into this?
This is all only going to happen when they lose Roundup. Otherwise, BC is short of cheap, predator-free summer grazing. That's why there's not many sheep here. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Plantations, well, I don't know. When I start talking sheep numbers, all my Australian training comes back. 30,000, yeah, I say 30,000. You can't say 30,000 with a straight face to sheep farmers in BC. They think 40 is a lot, and I'll say it again, these little farmers are really well informed. They're fanatics. They can't help themselves. And if you want to know if you can raise, what breed would do well in Prince George, for example, there's a farmer here that's been experimenting with different breeds and can tell you exactly what works. Like, some breeds are just the wrong sheep to take to a plantation. Now, I learned that the hard way. There was a New Zealand guy, big Maori, serious guy, right? Made a deal with the indigenous people down south that he'd bring in, 1,000 sheep or something like that from New Zealand. And the New Zealanders were subsidizing export because of a short of money. So anyway, so he shows up with his 1,500 sheep, bid on the contract in Prince George. He didn't get it. I got it. And I said, well, you're looking for sheep summer grazing. I'll rent your flock, right? But these were a New Zealand breed that I wasn't familiar with. But what was wrong with them? They were the most runaway little shits you'd ever run into. And so they're a breed that specializes in the mountains of New Zealand, right? Where you can't intensively graze mountains. You need sheep that don't want to flock together too much, and one's over here and one's over here, and they get the mountain grazed, right? Well, when you take them onto a plantation, they do not want to be a flock. So the whole works of them are trying to figure out how to get away, right?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, instead of the shepherds just having to, keep them together like normal sheep, these little buggers, you work yourself to exhaustion, right? Mm-hmm. Trying to keep this flock together. So we only took that flock once, and it was just too hard, right? Okay, and then I made the same mistake with a different breed. But these Rambouillet that I'm talking about, they're a Spanish Merino that the French got and put them on better pasture and turned them into this meat-wool combination that they brought very good sheep into Canada in the first place, and actually Canada has really good sheep. And so, the reason they've got such good sheep is the shorter summer grazing, and they eat everything except the very best ewe lambs. So if you do that for a couple hundred years, you get a really high quality animal at the end of it. And that's what Canada's been doing. Ever since they got sheep here, they've been eating everything that's not perfect, right? So anyway, I'm starting to run out of focus.
It's been 2 hours. We're gonna get kicked out from this
all good.
This studio really quick anyway. So we always ask our guests one question is, do you have any other question you wanna?
Not for now, no.
Okay, yeah. We always ask so picture you're the Minister of Forest. Picture you are the king of the province. Everybody will listen to you. You can change one policy that matters the most to you that you think the BC Forestry should change. What would that policy be?
I regret to say I hate Roundup. Right?
Stop spraying?
Yeah, stop spraying. It's all bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And then fire up a local sheep industry to graze local plantations, creating local work, local food, and local, who cares, sustainability. So, all the things that we believed, like all the things I was told that the government want: youth employment, Indigenous youth employment, economic diversity, value-added, on and on and on, food sustainability, all of that. We did all of that. And next thing they are bankrupt and totally broke and going like, there's something wrong with this picture. Well, what was wrong with it is it was all bullshit. They didn't really want to create youth employment. They didn't really want Indigenous employment or food sustainability. They want to spray BC with Roundup. That's all they wanted. That's all that was going on. Everything else is nonsense. And so I believe they've been. This is not just the licensees. This is all their buddies in senior ministry, in senior government positions. They comply with whatever Bayer wants. And that's spray BC. Well, that's what's happening, and I regret to say it, but I can't do anything about it, and I have to keep saying, no, I'm retired. It's not my problem anymore.
Nope.
And but I really hope that there's someone listening here to this that sorts out the nonsense from the reality and says, okay, let's push this. Eventually, it's going to happen. Now, how many sheep could they have here? Well, when they had 50,000, my farm held 1,000, could winter 1,000, and now they could have 50 farms in BC, farming the 50,000 instead of them all going back to Alberta. Well, now they're not going to be available from Alberta. If you outbid the solar panel guys, you can buy ewe lambs and still get very high quality sheep, and then build farms here in Prince George or Smithers and Houston, wherever you want, and farm locally and graze the plantations locally. That's totally what, if I was a Minister of Forestry, that's what I would encourage. It works. I couldn't find anything wrong with it, except maybe some idiots and corruption and a bit of nonsense, eh? But you would think the problem is going to be bears, it's going to be wolves, it's going to be cougars or something. No, the only problem we ran into was people. That's it. So if you can sort out the people end of it, you got a deal that can, like, if they got this industry up to 50,000 already, why would they stop at 100,000? And by the way, 50,000 sheep have 75,000 lambs worth about $20 million. So anybody, and this is before you start talking dairy sheep or anything. So anyway, there's some numbers. Someone's going to do this. Someone's going to put together a whole bunch of sheep farms in BC and graze BC plantations, like we saved millions of seedlings, right? And anyway, that's what's going to happen again eventually. That's my belief. I'll be in Australia or maybe in the island paradise. I wish them all luck. But all the research, they don't have to invent anything. It's already done. And also, if anybody's got any doubts about does it work in Prince George or choose a town, there are plantations already grazed off. Like you can go to Canfor and you could see a whole whack of, like those photos, you could go to those same plantations and guarantee there'll be 12-foot high trees or whatever. So there's all the evidence they need. And I really do believe you could get this thing up to 100,000 sheep and all living in Prince George. Oh, not Prince George, but BC. That's my belief. And
that's awesome. You had an amazing career working in Australia and BC. Now you're retiring. We hope you're successful. Relax. Don't think about all these crazy stuff. Let those get out of your mind. Just enjoy your retirement.
Yep.
Maybe my aunt lives in New Zealand, and then I'm planning to visit her some point.
Hey, you got to do it. You got to do it.
I'll probably go to Australia, come find you, and then buy you a case of beer, and then take me to some of the blocks you planted and some.
No, we never planted any NBC in Australia.
But anyway, just show me around if you don't mind.
No, they told me that we were too advanced. My Canadian tree planting techniques just shocked them. That they just couldn't believe that people could do this kind of productivity and. Anyway, it got ridiculous. But so meanwhile, here's my country telling me we're not letting you plant trees in it for us. And Canada at the same time is telling me, no, we're not going to give you any sheep grazing contracts. And I really looked like I was going to be stuck planting trees in BC forever. And there's a point where we go, do we get another 100 guys? Like, what do you do now? And but really what I want to do, and I know I've said this 100 times, plant the trees, graze them off until they're free to grow, farm the sheep, and milk them. That's what I really thought we were doing, and all on a big scale. Like, you see, when you say, okay, the farm that I built here, well, I didn't build it, but anyway, bought here, was a 1,000 sheep farm, right? Now, once you perfect that, you can replicate that as much as you want. You can have 3 more 1,000 sheep farms in Vanderholt for all you care. Right? But once the pattern is set up, this is what you do, you shear them at this day, and you kick them out bush on this day, all of that, it's all proven, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, we gotta shut this down. Otherwise, somebody's gonna get mad at me. Yeah, so I would just want to really appreciate for you, Dennis, to come and then share your life experience and your knowledge and wisdom with us, and we get the message loud and clear. Stop spraying. Get the sheep back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, all right. So, also want to thank C4 Radio for providing this studio for recording, and they're great. And so. This is wrap up. I don't know which episode, but 8 episode of our podcast, and really thank you for tuning in and spending time listening to us chit chat about forestry. So, UNBC Forestry Club Podcast is a student-led podcast sponsored by absolutely nobody, but a bunch of students who are passionate about forestry, nature, and just everything in forestry. And new episodes drop every week, so stay tuned for more insightful conversation and inspiring stories. And until next time, let's continue to grow together, rooted in our love for the forest. Have a great week, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, Dennis.
Well done.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
No worries.